The Last Ride. My name is Ethan, and I've been driving for Uber for about a year now. Most nights, I enjoy the solitude of the road, the soft glow of the dashboard lights, and the rhythmic hum of the engine. But there are nights, like the one I'm about to recount, that leave a mark on your soul. "Turn left," she instructed, her tone leaving no room for argument. I hesitated but complied, turning onto a narrow, unpaved road that seemed to disappear into the darkness. The trees closed in around us, and the only sound was the crunch of gravel beneath the tires. As we drove deeper into the woods, I felt a growing sense of unease. The woman remained silent, her gaze fixed on the darkness outside. I glanced at the app, but the GPS signal was weak, the map flickering erratically. "Are you sure this is the right way?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just keep going," she replied, her voice cold and unyielding. Minutes passed, and the road became increasingly treacherous. I could barely see a few feet ahead, the headlights illuminating only a small patch of gravel. Suddenly, I spotted something in the distance, a flicker of light. "Is that your destination?" I asked, my heart racing. "No," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Keep driving!" I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The light grew closer, revealing an old, dilapidated cabin nestled among the trees. It looked abandoned, the windows boarded up and the door hanging off its hinges. "Stop here," she commanded. I slammed on the brakes, the tires skidding on the gravel. "What? Here, this place looks deserted." "Just stop," she shouted, her voice echoing in the confined space. I turned off the engine, my heart pounding in my chest. "What are we doing here?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. "Get out," she said, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. Reluctantly, I stepped out of the car, the cold air hitting me like a slap. The woman followed, her movements fluid and deliberate. I glanced around, the darkness swallowing the surroundings. The cabin loomed before us, a shadowy figure in the night. "Why are we here?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I need to show you something," she replied, her eyes glinting in the dim light. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. I followed her toward the cabin, the wooden floor creaking beneath our feet. The door swung open with a loud groan, revealing a dark interior filled with dust and cobwebs. "Stay close," she said, stepping inside. I followed her into the cabin, the air thick with the smell of mildew. The only light came from the moon filtering through the cracks in the walls. I could barely make out the shapes of old furniture covered in sheets. "What are we looking for?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just wait," she said, her tone almost impatient. As I stood there, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was a chilly Friday night in October, and the streets were slick with rain. I had just finished a long shift at my day job and decided to log into the Uber app for a few extra bucks. The atmosphere was heavy, and I could sense something lurking in the shadows. I glanced around, my heart racing. Suddenly, the woman turned to me, her expression shifting. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her voice low and menacing. "What do you mean?" I stammered, taking a step back. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. I strained to listen, and my heart sank as I heard a faint whispering echoing through the cabin. It was a chorus of voices, overlapping and indistinct, but filled with a sense of urgency. "Get out!" I shouted, panic rising within me. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut, trapping us inside. "Let me out!" I yelled, pounding on the door. "What's happening?" The woman stood still, her gaze fixed on the shadows. "They're coming," she said, her voice trembling. "Who's coming?" I demanded, fear coursing through me. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, swirling around us like a storm. I could feel the temperature drop, the air thickening with dread. I turned to the woman, but she was no longer the same person. Her eyes were wide, filled with terror. "Help me!" she screamed, her voice echoing in the darkness. I stumbled back, my heart racing. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. "Find them," she cried, pointing into the shadows. "You have to help them." I felt a surge of confusion and fear. "Help who?" I asked, my voice shaking. The whispers grew louder, and I could see shapes moving in the darkness. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting and contorting into grotesque forms. I felt a presence behind me, cold and suffocating. "Get out!" I shouted, but the door wouldn't budge. I was trapped. In a moment of sheer panic, I turned and charged at the door, slamming my shoulder against it. The wood creaked and groaned, but it held firm. I could hear the whispers growing louder, the voices pleading for help. "Please," I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. "Let me out!" Suddenly, the door swung open, and I stumbled outside, gasping for breath. The night air hit me like a wave, and I turned to see the woman standing in the doorway, her expression twisted in anguish. "Help me!" she cried, reaching out toward me. I felt a surge of empathy, but I couldn't stay. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest. I sprinted back to my car, fumbling for the keys as I glanced over my shoulder. The woman was gone, but the whispers followed me, echoing in my mind. I jumped into the driver's seat and started the engine, my hands shaking as I gripped the wheel. I slammed the gas pedal, tearing down the road, desperate to escape the nightmare. I drove for what felt like hours, the darkness closing in around me. The city was alive with the sounds of laughter and music, but I was drawn to the quiet hum of my car, a sanctuary from the chaos outside. After a short wait, my phone buzzed with a ride request. I accepted it, and the app directed me to a dimly lit street on the outskirts of town. The whispers faded, but the sense of dread lingered. I finally reached a familiar street, the city lights breaking through the shadows. I pulled over, my heart racing, and took a moment to collect myself. What had just happened? I felt like I had stepped into a horror movie, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me. I glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the woman's face staring back at me, but there was nothing. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. I needed to get home, to forget about the night's events. I turned on the radio, hoping the familiar sounds would ground me. As I drove through the city, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. The shadows seemed to stretch longer, and the whispers echoed in my mind. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but the unease settled deep in my bones. The next day, I tried to put the experience behind me. I went about my routine, but the memory of the woman haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had left something unfinished, that I had failed to help her. That night, I logged back into the Uber app, hoping for a distraction. But as I drove through the city, I felt a sense of dread creeping back in. The streets were alive with activity, but I felt isolated, as if I were the only one aware of the darkness lurking just beneath the surface. I picked up a few fares, but each ride felt heavier than the last. I couldn't help but glance in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the woman again, but she never appeared. As the night wore on, I found myself driving toward the outskirts of town, the familiar road leading me back to the woods. I felt a pull, an inexplicable urge to return to the cabin. I fought against it, but the feeling was overwhelming. Finally, I couldn't resist any longer. I turned the car around and headed back toward the cabin, my heart racing with anticipation and fear. The road felt different this time, the shadows deeper and more menacing. As I approached the cabin, I felt a chill wash over me. The air was thick with tension, and the whispers returned, echoing in my mind. I parked the car and stepped out, the darkness enveloping me. "Help me," the voices whispered, a haunting chorus that sent shivers down my spine. I approached the cabin, the door hanging ajar. I hesitated, but the urge to find answers pushed me forward. I stepped inside, the familiar smell of mildew filling my nostrils. "Is anyone here?" I called out, my voice trembling. The shadows danced along the walls, and I felt a presence behind me. I turned, but there was no one there. As I pulled up, I noticed a figure standing under a flickering streetlight. It was a woman dressed in a long, dark coat, her hair damp from the rain. She looked up as I approached, her face partially obscured by shadows. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a storm. "Help me!" they cried, merging into a cacophony of sound. I felt a surge of fear and determination. "I'm here to help!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the darkness. Suddenly, the woman appeared before me, her face twisted in anguish. "You came back," she said, her voice filled with desperation. "I want to help you," I replied, my heart racing. "What do you need?" "Find my children," she pleaded, her eyes wide with fear. "They're lost in the woods." "Where are they?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Help me," the voices echoed, merging into a cacophony of sound. I felt a surge of determination. "I'll help you find them," I promised, my heart pounding in my chest. The woman pointed toward the darkness. "They're waiting for you." I took a deep breath and stepped into the shadows, the whispers growing louder. I could feel the weight of despair pressing down on me, but I pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. I ventured deeper into the woods, the darkness closing in around me. The whispers grew louder, guiding me through the trees. I could feel the presence of the children, their spirits lingering in the air. "Where are you?" I called out, my voice echoing in the silence. Suddenly, I spotted a flicker of light in the distance. I rushed toward it, my heart racing with hope. As I approached, I saw a small clearing illuminated by the moonlight. In the center stood a group of children, their faces pale and ghostly. "Help us!" they whispered in unison, their voices hauntingly familiar. I felt a chill run down my spine. "What happened to you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "We're lost," one of the children said, tears streaming down her face. "We can't find our way home." I felt a surge of empathy for their plight. "I'll help you," I promised, my heart aching for them. But as I reached out to them, the shadows closed in and the whispers grew louder. "Help us," they cried, their voices merging into a cacophony of sound. I felt a surge of panic as the shadows surrounded me. "No, I won't leave you," I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. The children's faces twisted in anguish. "You can't help us," they said, their voices echoing in my mind. "You're one of us now." I stumbled back, my heart racing. "No, I'm not like you," I shouted, but the shadows closed in, suffocating me. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to see the woman standing beside me, her expression filled with sorrow. "You have to let them go," she said, her voice filled with pain. "I can't," I cried, tears streaming down my face. "They need help. They're lost," she said, her voice breaking. "You can't save them." "Are you Ethan?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the sound of the rain. "Yeah, that's me," I replied, trying to gauge her demeanor. There was something unsettling about her, but I brushed it off. "Where to?" "Just drive," she said, sliding into the back seat. "You have to save yourself." I felt a surge of despair as the shadows closed in around me. I was losing my grip on reality, the darkness swallowing me whole. I turned to the woman, desperation in my eyes. "Help me!" But she was gone, leaving me alone in the darkness. The shadows surrounded me, their whispers growing louder. "Help us!" they cried, merging into a cacophony of sound. I felt a surge of panic as I realized I was trapped. The darkness was alive, feeding off my fear. I could see the faces of the lost children in the shadows, their eyes filled with sorrow. No, I screamed, fighting against the darkness. I won't let you take me. With every ounce of strength, I pushed back against the shadows, focusing on the woman's face. You need to let go, I shouted. You need to find peace. The shadows hesitated, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope, but then they surged forward, overwhelming me. I felt myself being pulled into the darkness, the woman's cries echoing in my mind. I awoke in my car, gasping for breath. The sun was rising, casting a warm glow over the trees. I felt disoriented, unsure of what had just happened. Had it all been a dream? I glanced around, but the cabin was gone. The road was empty, and the whispers had faded. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. I needed to get home, to forget about the night's events. But as I drove through the city, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still with me. The shadows lingered in the corners of my mind, a reminder of the darkness I had faced. From that day on, I still remained thinking about it. The night had left its mark on me, a scar that would never fully heal. I could feel the woman's presence, a reminder of the pain and loss that lingered in the darkness. I often wondered if I had truly helped her, or if I had only stirred the darkness within. The city felt different now, the shadows deeper and more menacing. I could still hear the whispers echoing in the quiet moments. And sometimes, when the silence pressed close, I could still hear her voice whispering in the dark, "Help me." The haunting never truly ended. It simply became a part of me, a shadow that would follow me wherever I went. I had faced the darkness, but I knew it would always be there, lurking just beyond the light. I'll tell you where to go. I started driving, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. She was staring out the window, her expression unreadable. I turned onto a side street, and the app directed me toward a part of town I wasn't familiar with. The buildings grew sparse, and the streetlights became fewer and farther between. "Where are we headed?" I asked, trying to break the silence. "Just keep going straight," she replied, her voice distant. "I'll let you know when to turn." I felt a shiver run down my spine. The further we drove, the more isolated the area became. The road was lined with overgrown trees, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. "Are you okay?" I asked, glancing back at her. "You seem a bit tense." "I'm fine," she said sharply, her eyes narrowing. "Just drive." I swallowed hard, focusing on the road ahead. The app pinged again, and I noticed we were approaching a dead end. It looks like the road ends up ahead," I said, my voice tinged with uncertainty. Thanks for watching. The veil between our world and theirs is thinner than you think. Each like, each share, each subscription strengthens the connection. Feed the channel before it feeds on you.